I climbed the mountain with one before, Mount Rainier, and he was literally like,
Oh, you know what? Are we rolling?
"Yes, we're on right now."
So
We got 90 minutes left.
So we're capturing what we're talking now?
Yes.
Awesome.
Everything. So it's like, we got to about 10,000 on Mount Rainier, and he was like, we all got to know each other a little bit in that time and walking up. And, we said, so what's next? Because he just served so many different, whatever. So he wasn't getting into the details or the particulars, but he was like, well, after I summit this, whatever, I'm going to get picked up by my boy, and we're going to go out to Alaska, where we're going to go hunting for elk or whatever you hunt in Alaska in the mountains. And he's like, but the best part about it is a chopper has to come and get you, because if you're around dead meat in this area, grizzlies are coming. I was just like, damn, it's not, you know what I'm saying? He's just like,
You just said it casually.
he said, that's the best part. And I'm like, yo.
You gotta be kidding me.
That's what you're a seek. That's what you have. Not only are you climbing a mountain, which is no joke. I mean, it's 14,500 the summit. But Mount Rainier is a good kind of like, if you want to call it, practice run for the Himalayas, or
You've hiked mountain.
I've climbed it. Yeah,
Wow.
yes, it's a climb. We won't even allow you to say hike it. Twice. The first time we got blown off at 13,000. It was like couldn't see it 5 feet in front of you. They turned us all around. I'm not gonna lie. There's a spot that's called Disappointment Cleaver or something like that, because you think that's the summit. Because it's literally like 2 hours of straight uphill, gut wrenching switchbacks. Straight uphill for 2 hours straight, maybe even longer. And the first climbers thought that was the summit, and then they realized that, oh no, that's just. And I probably wasn't going to be able to make it past that.
Yeah.
So I was almost happy that.
Anyway.
But it was tough getting down. It's harder coming down, and especially in tough situations. But the next year we came back a little later in the season, and beautiful weather, and summited.
And coming down, I would assume, I don't know, because like you said, it's like people say when we play boxing, you can't like say you hike the mountain here.
Right.
But so I'm relating it to hiking, right? I haven't done a lot of mountain climbing at all, I'll say, or anything like other than like a casual hike that you could take a kid on. I haven't done much more than that. I mean, I'll go for a long time.
Yeah.
Can't take kids on that.
Right.
In terms of going down typically, even for me on hikes, it's harder because you have to move slower and then like be cognizant of your joints and roll it an ankle. What's coming down like Mount Rainier like?
I mean, once you get to 10,000 feet, especially if you go at certain times or the weather is shifted, it's they have a tremendous amount of snow. I mean, you have the gear. I mean, we got on full on like the type of parkers where you could take anywhere in the world and be warm. You got the gloves, you got the spiked boots. So, I mean, there's parts where you could run because the snow is that thick, but I mean, you could run off a cliff if you don't see it. Straight up. I mean, that year, and this is not something to boast about or at all, just to talk about the danger of it. But the week before we went up was a very kind of like morbid situation, because 7 guides had just passed away on the mountain a week before in like a terrible storm.
Yes.
And
7 people?
And some of the bodies were still up there. No. So yeah, I mean, it's because of the storm and the situation and where they actually. I mean, if you fall in a crevasse, I mean.
So, I have a friend, a really close friend of mine, and in Boston, and he was like telling me like, man, I can't wait. Next week I'm going skydiving. And it's a birthday present, what's going on? Like, all right, well, I'm not doing it just because I would do it. I'll do things like I would love to climb Mount Rainier because I feel like I'm in a lot more control than I would be in skydiving, even though they're both extremely dangerous, right? But anyway, he's getting ready to go, and they're going through like the safety. They typically with stuff like this, they have like a safety class, and they're going through all that, getting ready, and here's how to use this. And they're almost at the end of that and getting ready to board the plane. And all of a sudden, people start screaming. Everybody's screaming. And all of a sudden, like, within eyesight, guy falls from the sky. Boom, hits the ground, dies right in front of them. And needless to say, they did not go. It's just that's not funny.
Right.
The fact that now they're thinking about, oh, are we going to go up or not? And they all, of course, said no.
Right.
That I'm just obviously it's like not funny at all. I shouldn't laugh, but
No.
yeah, what happened to the man? But they're obviously super shocked, and he was like, yeah, we didn't go up. But what is it like? And these are things you never expect to happen. What is it like going up Mount Rainier, right?
Mm-hmm.
And pardon me, anybody who's listening, I laugh at things that are outrageous, right? Because I try not to. I just find laughter helps me get through things. But I know, like I said, there's nothing funny about it. But what is it like going up Mount Rainier? And last week 7 people died, and some of the bodies are still there, and you're walking up, and you may even run into a body. Like do you just not even think about it, or?
No, you have to think about it, and the reason why it made the climb that much more meaningful because there's a bond. I mean, if you ever played team sports or if you ever had a team in sport, and you just know that like your boy is gonna have your back, whether it's basketball, football, but you know that your teammate is going to have your back. And so the guides that were bringing us up were not like in a cheerful mood. Mm-hmm. And because we're grown men, and I think this was like 2015 and then 2016 or 2014 and 15, as a matter of fact, I had went up right after I started this immunotherapy treatment. So I think it was 2015 because the doctors said, we don't know how this is going to affect your lungs. There has been some evidence that this immunotherapy will affect your lungs. And I said, well, I'll let you know when I get back. And it wasn't like
So I don't want to lose pace on the story, but just to give context, because somebody might be listening to this and had not watched our previous interview where we talked about your past, but can you just give context to that?
Oh, yeah. We'll get, I think we'll probably get into that, but just in case we don't, in 2010, I was diagnosed with stage 4 Hodgkin's lymphoma. And since that time, I've undergone a number of different trials and a number of different treatments, including 3 transplants. And we'll get into that. But just
so in that moment, they told you, explain that again.
One of the new treatments that I had after I relapsed from the first transplant, which was a stem cell, my own stem cells, was this trial we have shown. There's evidence that has shown that there might be some impact on your lungs or some side effects that affect your lungs, and so it's probably not going to be okay, or probably wouldn't be wise to climb the mountain.
And you said, I'll tell you better when I get back.
Yeah. Because I had been through so much already up until in that 5 years that I just, resigned on like just saying to myself, like, I'm going to live my life as to the fullest as possible.
Going up with the guys are...
Going up, the guys are not engaging as they did this next time we went up, and for good reasons. A lot of their friends were lost, and they were just doing it at that point because it was their job, and maybe it was in memory of them, but there was nothing about that climb that I can personally remember, except for being with two of my other teammates and one of our other friends doing it together, that I can say was enjoyable, because it was, like I said, it was my first time mountaineering. It was super hard. It was cold. The weather was not great, and this tragedy had just happened just days before, if not weeks. But I can't remember if it was a week or either way.
Yeah,
there was a somber time.
Recently.
Exactly.
The bodies are still up there, and then recently.
Exactly. So to your other friend's story about skydiving, and like I tell Candace, my wife, certain things is like, when something happens to a major company, that's probably one of the safest times to do something with them. Or they could just be really bad company. If they're a big company and they're getting checked and they're under a lot of scrutiny and they want to make sure that they can actually still survive, they're gonna make sure, at least in the next couple of jumps, that everything is taken care of. So I didn't say that about this climb, but I did think to myself, like,
if ever there was a time.
Exactly.
I was telling someone the other day that is close family friend. She's terrified of flying, absolutely terrified. But we had something going on that we needed her to show up for with our family and her family, and she did it. And she was like, "I'll come, but you have to get a relative of mine to come fly with me," and so on and so forth. It's a big deal. She's terrified of flying, so she's on her way back and to LA. We were in Texas, and she says, we're talking about how she's scared, and her friend's like, "Hey, she won't come down, blah blah blah." And I was like, "Hey, remember, flying is like, I think it's statistically like 200 times safer than driving, something like that." And so I was explaining that, and then I was like, and then I casually said, and after what happened with Boeing, like, there could not be a safer time to fly.
Right.
To which she responded, "What happened with Boeing?" I was like,
"Oh, no.
No.
No,
And her friend was like, shut up. And I was like, well, and then she's like, "What?" And I was like, and I finally was just like, but I really believe that you're right. It was the safest time. But then, like you said, you still have to be on your P's and Q's. Why? Can I ask you, why, especially, why do things like that? I have a friend, Josh Takeman. You may have seen him around the gym sometime. He's here in the morning. Eboost, that's his company.
Oh, yeah.
Earlier. Yeah. But he likes to say he likes to do one hard thing every year.
Yeah.
But you're doing things that are hard and also dangerous. Why?
I think it goes back to kind of the conversation we were having before we started talking on mics with Navy SEALs and people who have been through, for me personally, a traumatic circumstances, but at the same time operated at a peak performance at one point in our lives. As a Division I college football player, I craved contact. I was a defensive end linebacker, and my dad was the hardest dude I've ever met in my life. My dad was the hardest man I've ever met. 25 years in the military, really? One of 13, came from a tough background. Dad wasn't there, was always the one that was going to do something with his life and his family.
Where did he grow up?
In Baltimore, Maryland, Annapolis.
Got it. And then he went into the military?
Went into the military. Was stationed all over the world, Philippines,
Navy?
England, Air Force.
Air Force.
Yep. And, I was the only child, same name. So he was going to make sure that, and my dad is the only person that I've ever known in my life to never tell me a lie. At least I've never caught him in a lie.
Good.
He's not here anymore. But, if that man said he was going to do something, whether it was good in favor of me or not, he was going to do it. I mean, he sat me out of all-star games when I was, 12, 13 years old. It didn't matter what was on the line. If he said I was supposed to do something and I didn't do it, or if I was acting out and it wasn't in line with the way that a porter should be acting and with his name, it was a problem. Yeah. And so, I've always just challenged myself to do things that may seem difficult or impossible to others, but to me, it's just the uncomfortableness of being or having a little bit of a trepidation or I don't want to say fear because I don't operate out of fear, but it's just kind of like it would be exciting to do something that's so hard and so painful that now you know that you could push your body and your mind to places that you just never discovered before. It's like, if you're a weightlifter, if you're a bodybuilder, if you're a track star, whatever you are, if you're a businessman or if you're a chef, don't you want to make the next meal the best meal? I want to make the next accomplishment that I have in life the best accomplishment, because if we're just doing the same thing over and over again, if I'm just maintaining, if I'm just giving my life, just doing maintenance all the time, then I'm not really improving, so to speak. I'm just patching up, putting Band-Aids on things that, but if I'm like tearing down this wall or expanding that, wall or adding a bathroom or just, whatever, climbing a mountain and then going to climb a bigger mountain and then going to climb a bigger mountain. I mean, 15 years ago, I told my brother I wanted to climb, what's the one, Everest. And he was like, why? I was like, because it's there. Because it's there.
It's there, yeah.
There's no rhyme or reason to why I want to do the things that I want to do. It's just there's something in me that's pushed. Why did I come to California? I mean, because people started saying in my senior year that I should look into acting and modeling. I mean, it's like,
Yeah.
but enough people said it.
I'm doing it.
I'm doing it with no money, no friends out here. One friend I knew from high school, they lived in the Bay, and I just did it. And here I am, 22 years later.
Still making it.
You know.
And can I ask you? There's a lot of, and you'll hear once I get to the end of the question. So bear with me, because this is a respectful question. Someone who, is obviously super in touch with what's the term?
Intuition.
With that for sure, but their mortality.
Mm-hmm.
Loves his children. Mm-hmm. I see the way you are with your children and your family, like to protect her, someone who's raising their kids right, looking at like to a T, like if that was whatever. Being a great father was there's a picture next to the word father, it would be you. Right? I've known you enough to know that.
I appreciate that.
But at the same time, doing things that are risky, right? Mm-hmm. I was talking to actually the same dude I was talking to before, my friend who I said was a Navy SEAL, and we were talking, and I was expressing to him, and he checked me, how, when I go fight, I'm a boxer, like I'll go fight. There's no reason for me. I don't have to fight. It's not like I'm trying to do it to pull myself out of poverty or anything like that. Don't really have much to prove, ultimately. There's things I always put to myself, of course. I go in there and fight, and for the most part, it's going to be fine. There's people who have 10 wars, and they're fine. I've never had a war and in the ring. But you could get hit in a weird way and fall back and hit your head and never be the same dude. You could take a knee. I've seen guys take a knee, and the person they're fighting, they take a knee and they turn to look up at the ref. The person they're fighting hits in the back of the head, and they go on, and now they're in a coma, right? Or they're, like I said, never the same dude again. And some people die, right? That happens 2 to 3 times a year. Now, I have many thousands of boxing matches that happen globally. There's like a boxing match almost every single day in the world. So the percentage of people deaths versus football, it's actually pretty low, but it happens, right? So I was telling him how I think about that when I go into the ring. I'm like, I gotta get back home safe to my daughter. I don't want to look back and say I let my daughter down because I'm in the boxing ring doing something that I feel is essential for my development and could provide her, more opportunities and all that. But I don't really need to. I don't want to die over boxing because I have my daughter to raise. And he goes, but that's what's going to get you killed. And I was like, huh? He's like, you can't think like that, bro. And he just jumped on me. It's like, that's how you get killed. That's how you don't come back to your daughter. And I was like, all right. So I had to reframe that. And so from someone who I struggle with the same thing, and I'm going to fight 2 or 3 more times this year because I'm interested in the person I'm going to become in the process, forget the result. For you, having been through way more than I've been through, how do you reconcile that? Knowing that you could, for instance, just Mount Rainier, go up and not come back?
No, that's a great question. And if you're a father with kids and you're a good father, you care, you're obviously going to think about that as well. The thing about life and being a role model to your children is one of these stories might sum it up. I have a 5-year-old daughter, right? And she was probably 4 at the time. We were at this birthday party, and there was this huge jump thing in this dude's backyard, and all the kids were having a great time, and a couple of them. And I saw her at one point sitting on the edge of it, and I said to myself, she's gonna fall off of there. And the grass, it was probably, a good 5-foot drop, maybe 6 foot max, right? If she fell off the back, but if she fell off in the front, she would land in the rest of the jumper route thing, which would have been a safe landing. But I was like, there's 90% chance she's gonna roll off the back and hit the grass and probably cry. Now, I can get up and stop that from happening right now. And I literally had this conversation with myself and almost got up, but I said, she needs to learn this lesson.
Okay.
So if we're good parents, and she fell and she cried, but she was fine. But if I said, if we're good parents, right, how many times do we stop our kids from learning the lesson And how many times do we say, if you're going to do that, you better focus, lock in, and give it your best. Because now I've trained myself from when they were little girls to now they're 5 and 7 to when they're doing something that could potentially end in an accident or for them getting hurt. I say, there's a high chance that you're going to get hurt doing that. You should probably stop or you better lock in, right? So if I'm telling my kids that, like, who's telling me that? Nobody, right? I have to be aware of, if I go skydiving, this is what I'm risking. Now, why do I want to go skydiving? Because I'm scared to do it? Because I probably would be. But that's not my calling.
Yeah.
Like, it's not calling me, right? I love to be in nature. Yeah. I love to climb. I love to hike, right? I love the physical activity. See, I like to challenge myself physically more than just, free risk taking. Like, I don't need to drive 200 miles an hour on the highway.
It's not a physical challenge.
It's not a physical challenge. Yeah. But I'll pay $500 to go to the Porsche track and do it under safer circumstances. Yeah. I mean, there's always a risk, right? Yeah. That the brakes go out or any other thing. But again, calculated risk becomes more in play now that I'm a father. But if you want to think that I'm just gonna like sit at home and live in this bubble or try to protect my kids from a world that we all know is not just a bed of roses the whole time, then I'm doing them a disservice. Yeah. And I'm doing myself a disservice as well. I mean, you've been around boxing all your life. Yeah. I mean,
all my life.
You love to box.
I do.
Okay. Yeah. So, if you love to box, if you love doing what you're doing, then, unfortunately, there are things in this life that have a higher risk than, working a desk job. I mean, but hell, you could be a register clerk at own a gas station, be very successful as a businessman and get robbed.
Yes.
I mean, what do we
shot?
That's what I'm saying. I mean, what are we protecting ourselves from? At the end of the day, it's you don't go skydiving after drinking or doing drugs. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like, do it to the best of your ability to be as safe as possible. Pay attention during the safety checks. Like, why didn't this chute open up? Well, you didn't pack it. You know what I'm saying? If you really want to be a skydiver, if you really want to, protect yourself to the fullest, then maybe you should pack the bag yourself and see. I don't know. Yeah. I've never skydived. But you saddle up. You know what I'm saying? Like, we didn't go to Mount Rainier just willy-nilly. Like, me and my boy went with a friend of ours who would climb 20 other mountains and done that before. Like, we at least try to get yourself around people who are skilled, knowledgeable, can like understand the playing field, before you do something that might be a little bit out of your comfort zone or a little bit risky if you have kids, or if you don't have kids. I mean,
either or.
Yeah.
I was talking to. I'm glad we are having this discussion because it's. I just find I find great men do great things, right? Do things like that, and just goes along with the territory. You don't find, in my opinion, you don't find great men and find like, oh, they're only great in that lane. Mm-hmm. They only take risk in that lane, right? Right. They only do things that require an immense amount of preparation and attention to detail and all that in that lane. They're doing it in 2 or 3 different lanes. I've always found that, and I'm hard pressed to find a place where that's not the case. Even a guy like Joe Rogan is a comedian. Like, he's competitive kickboxer. Kickboxing is one of those dangerous sports, right? But my business partner in one of my companies, his name's David Patch Levins, and he owns a company called Good Life Gyms, and he started from scratch, and it's depending on how you value companies, it's one of the biggest, if not the biggest fitness company in the world. And he's a pioneer, and he took an immense amount of risk to get there. Mm-hmm. As he's at the what do you call it? He told me in the early days he had to mortgage his house multiple times, payroll, him and different people that were close that helped him start the company earlier had to just like not get paid. And there's just been so many times where like things happen that like he couldn't even tell everybody but he's like, I'm gonna make this happen. Right. But also what goes along with that is, to this day, he's in his about to be, I think, right around 70. He still goes heli skiing.
Oh yeah.
He like just
Yeah, the guy that I told you that we went with mountaineering, that's one of his pastimes.
Same thing.
Skiing. Yeah.
and then recently had a really bad accident, and is trying to ante up and get ready again and training. I'm like, are you crazy? You know? But they don't go to those. I think the immense amount of success he did and what he's created for his family, I think it goes with that will, that urge to be able to take risks. But then he told me one day, he was here, and he said, George, you know, and we were in Malibu, like kind of by I was living in the Point Doom area, the like PDC.
Oh yeah.
And so from there you can lean to the ocean or look up
Like
and see all the hills. Yeah, kind of that. So he's looking up, and he goes, he says, you see that highest mountain? He said, the reason I've survived all the things that people view as risky is because I know when I'm going to turn around. I've already decided that before I go out, based on, you know, what I think I'm prepared for. It's like, so I have, whether it's 8 hours, and I said, if I can't get there in 8 hours of turning around, whether it's how much water or resources I have, whatever it is, I've already decided when I get to some sort of thing, I'm turning around.
Right.
And he said, that's why I've been in this for 7 years.
Yeah,
You know?
the preparation. And also, man, you know, let's not take away the fact that, you know, I'm 45 years old. So it's like the feeling that I get when I experience some of these things that I've done is like, you know, why do surfers surf in 30-degree weather? You know, I mean, in 40-degree water. You know, it's like, I can't imagine going out there in the waters of the Pacific and just getting in it. It's freezing to me.
Yeah.
But there's people out there for hours because catching that one wave, you know what I'm saying? Just it's like hitting an iron, you know, a 5-iron, you know, 180 yards dead center onto a green is like, if you played like total crap the whole other 18 or whatever amount of shots you've had, but you get that one shot, you're coming back. Coming back.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's what's your pleasure mixed with wanting to be physically challenged, mixed with, you know, wanting to see the world from a different view. I mean, it's something else being on top of a mountain, looking down and seeing the top of other mountains. You know, it's just like, you're like, you know what I'm saying? It's just like, oh, wow.
And probably knowing half of 1% of the world has been there.
I mean, it's just, you know, it's a beautiful thing. It's like becoming a parent. It's like, you know, it's just, wow, that's what that's like. You know, you have no idea what it feels like to experience some of these things until you do it. I mean, people could tell you all that you know, all that they know about being a parent, but until you actually have your first kid, then you're like, oh, snap. And you just keep having those moments over and over and over and over again. And you want to, right? Yeah. Like, don't you want to just keep finding out where this relationship with your daughter is going to go?
Yep.
Okay, yeah. So I want to keep finding out what my relationship with mountains are going to be, or, you know, whatever I'm doing that's challenging me that might seem hard to other people. I mean, dude, 15 years of battling cancer, 3 transplants. I mean, that's hard enough. You know, I want to have some fun.
How does it compare, man? Because I know there others. I have no experience, so that's why I'm asking a question. But I was talking to Eric. Was one of the things that we were talking about earlier is how a person who like gets off, like if you get a person off the couch, they are not in shape, maybe never been an athlete before, maybe slightly overweight, and you're like, you know, I want you to run a quarter mile. You point, and you have a point. You're like, that's a quarter mile. Run it. And apparently studies have shown, and it's been proven that their perception of that 250 meters, if you take that same person and, it looks far to them.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I can't, like, I guess no to it. Like, that looks far to them, right? Now you get them in shape, 3 months later, they're running every day, 3 miles is nothing, and they feel physically capable and confident. Say, hey, they look at that 250, and it actually looks closer.
Oh, wow.
Like if you ask them, like, how far does that look? Yeah. It looks closer, and that's been proven over and over and over.
Right. Well, there you go. I mean, see, the psychology of man, I mean, and women, I mean, you know, I just put man as a human being, but I mean, like, that's what's really interesting me in these days, you know, I want to speak to people who can to truly understand how the mind works. I mean, I was listening to a Dr. Huberman podcast once, and he was like, the only piece of the brain that's outside of the skull is in the eye. That's like a little, I don't know, it's tissue or something, but that's why when you see something that's scary, that's far away, like a dog, if you see a dog running at you with his teeth gnarled, like you're seeing it first, right? And it triggers this emotion. So like your brain is attached to that's what I'm saying. There's only one part of your brain that's attached outside of your skull, which is your eyes. Yeah. So again, it's like, why is it that things appear to be further or harder if you haven't done them? So if you know that, right, that's something that I understand why I do want to do things, because it's not as hard as you think. Like, right, it's very difficult in my mind to think sometimes about what I did, what I've gotten through to get to where I am now, as far as just a patient, right? In cancer units, getting full body chemo, getting full body radiation, whatever chemo, transplants. Like when I got the first one in 2011, I never wanted to do it again. I was really like against doing it. But then in 2023, I had to in order to survive, right? So, but it was like, I instantly switched from never wanted to do that again. Like, that's why I did the other type of transplant first, the trial in 2022, was because I was like, anything but what I just had to do. It's hard to think about being in a hospital for a month or 6 or 2 months or whatever the situation is. Some people are in there for months at a time. I mean, there's kids, man, who have leukemia who are in there for, a year.
Yeah.
So it's all relative, right? If I'm getting through that, then climbing a mountain's nothing.
And you answered my question. That's out. Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
You see where I'm about
Yeah,
that.
exactly. So it's why do people keep doing? Why do people? It's like you said. It's very hard to imagine someone who is excellent, very successful, driven to be good at one thing, and that doesn't like correlate into something else that they're doing. Whether it's being a great father, whether it's being a coach, whether it's being a great business entrepreneur, or what have you. It just, there's only one way to do things for most people that I know who are of excellence, and that's everything they do is of excellence, or they try to get it to that point. You just have to do it.
Yeah. I heard Andre Ward say something. He said that to me, the way he presented it to me was like, this is like one of the defining quotes of his, everything he's accomplished in life. And he said that his mentor and coach told him, how you do some things is how you do all things.
Exactly. I mean, it's not a day I don't get out of bed where it's like, make the bed. I mean, straight up. As soon as you get out, make the bed.
Do it.
It's just, man, but isn't it great though when you have, when your habits, like my new company is called Brainwashed for Greatness.
Brainwashed for greatness.
Yeah, because I was speaking to somebody a couple of months ago, and they were like, "Oh, how you been, man? How's the recovery done?" Da, da, da. And I said, "Man, I basically just for the last 3 decades just trying to brainwash myself for greatness." And the phone got quiet, and I was like, "Hello?" He said, "Nah, man, I'm just." And this is an older gentleman, and he's
Brain flash.
and he was just like, "Man, that's probably one of the most prolific statements I've heard in at least 20 years." And he said, "Maybe ever." And he said, because brainwashing has a negative connotation, right? Yeah. It's like, oh, they're brainwashed, or that, it always goes to something that you probably shouldn't be doing or thinking, right? But if you're brainwashed for greatness, how great is that? Like, if you literally have been brainwashed to only seek excellence. I mean, everything you do is, and guess what though? When you're fighting for your life, I mean, you could ask the Navy SEAL friends that you have when they've been in battle, this and the other thing. When it's go time, and you've been brainwashed in that type of format, like it's automatic. This is what needs to be done. One of those guys, I think Jocko, what's his name, said, I took this from him. He says, whenever somebody came to him with a situation, or when things weren't looking or feeling or going the way that they had planned them to be, guess what his answer was? Good. because now he has to figure some stuff out. Now he has to really dig in. Now he's got to really figure out who he can count on. Because you could bet your ass you can count on him.
Yeah.
You see,
Good.
You say good. So guess what I say now? Good. My boys call me, or the homegirls call me, or whatever. My friends, family call me. This, that, the other thing's going on. Good. What we gonna do now? Solution based. You know, me and my one of my partners, we make films together, and he's just like, man, we love working together because whenever I call him when we're filming, he'll be like, everything okay? I'm not gonna call you with bad news. I'm just gonna call you with either what I just fixed, or tell you how great everything else is going.
My results here.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's like, but you know, I don't care what other people think. I don't care what other people are saying or doing, or if they think I'm an asshole, or if they think I'm too extreme with it.
Yeah.
They haven't walked in my shoes.
Yeah.
They haven't walked in my shoes. And man, having that type of attitude gives me so much more understanding, puts me at so much more peace with people who have completely opposite views from me. Because I'm like, I can't tell a man or a woman who lives in the cold mountains of West Virginia that they should be using clean energy. If all they know for generations is that coal put food on their table.
Yeah, we're say that. Yeah.
And I go to that extreme because that was my first kind of years ago. It was my first kind of opening to that type of mindset of like, wow. I've been saying America's too big of a country for everybody to really want the same thing everywhere.
I fully agree with that.
I mean, it's just, you know, it's just so. But to really open my mind up is my mom was bigger and telling me, oh, this was Manchin and this governor in West Virginia. He's a Democrat, but he always vote. I said, Mom, let's do the research on this guy before we start talking about what he is and what he isn't doing. Where's his family from? Coal. Millions of dollars of coal. His constituents are in West Virginia. So what you think he's gonna get elected and then do something opposite that they want? I mean, let's just be real here. So, you know, again, I started thinking to myself, oh, okay. There's other people, and it sounds crazy to say out loud, but this is how we got to really break it down.
Yeah.
There's other people with different needs, different backgrounds, different educational experiences, different life experiences, been done by this, that, the other thing that I haven't experienced. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've been called or emailed about trying to do a podcast or interview about the Black experience of the medical procedures and the medical care that I've received. And I tell them every time, if you're looking for a bad experience, I'm not the one to call. And I said, but my life has been like no other. Like, I don't know anybody else like that's had the same journey that I've had.
Yeah.
The same experience that I've had. You know what I'm saying? Like, because in 15, 16 years of being in the under medical care, like, I'm talking about, if not daily, weekly, recently it's gone to like once every 3 weeks, almost a month. But for 15 years straight, been under medical care and surveillance and this, that, and that thing. Man, one time, I think in the beginning, a nurse tried to say like I couldn't have more than a certain amount of visitors in that room, and I was just like, that ain't happening. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Because like my life is on. It wasn't during COVID. It wasn't that we weren't being rowdy. You know what I'm saying?
That's
it wasn't. We weren't being rowdy or loud. Like I needed the energy.
Yeah.
And that was it. So I think, man, and you'll hear this a lot in life. I know this is cliche, but it's like, you get what you give. You know, your return on investment is what you invested into the situation.
You know, it's interesting. I say I couldn't agree more. And I think what people miss sometimes, as you said, you get what you give. Like when you walk into the room, you're going to get what you give to that room.
That's right.
And I think and it's well intentioned, but sometimes we show up in rooms And we're so focused on how other people are looking at us or treating us or what they're doing for us or what they're not doing for us. If they're doing something nice for us, why are they being so nice?
Right.
Or why, it's all right. We get so focused on that because maybe we've been trained to be like that, or that's what we've grown up around. Or is it we have somebody we look up to who's always feeding us that, right? Because that's how they're responding to reality. But then we can be so focused on how everybody's looking at us and how they're treating us, we forget to focus on how we're showing up in the room and how that can contribute to the situation, and not have the understanding to know that, yeah, but if you show up in that room differently, you can change the whole energy in that room. You can. And that's
100%.
power, whether there's good people or bad people in the room.
Exactly. But guess what? As you get powerful and understand that, you make the room what you want it to be.
Yeah.
Bro.
That's heavy.
I mean, I'm just saying.
Yeah.
It's like, I tell my wife a lot, we talk about just kind of my energy. And my wife is one of the sweetest people I know, and she cares about everybody's feelings. She's very empathetic, and I'm not.
Yeah.
And I tell her all the time, and it's like, look, I love who I love. And I have great conversation. I love to get to know people, man, besides what they do. I talking to a woman today. Her daughter was in the softball little clinic that we had this morning.
Yeah.
And, just in the first couple of minutes of conversation, we were talking about our backgrounds in sports. And she was like, she's from Fresno, but she used to sleep on the floor and pay for school and had to quit softball because she had to pay, work.
Yeah.
But what I heard was sleeping on the floor. And I'm like, so what were your parents? And they were like, she was like, they were surviving too. Fresno's agricultural town.
Yeah.
If things aren't really hitting, or if there's a financial crisis or what have you, they could be some of the biggest sufferers. Because it's dependent on people spending money and doing, produce.
Yeah.
So, but I'm interested in a person who went through sleeping on the floor till she was holding one baby and watching another. Like, I love those type of stories of success and not just surviving, but thriving during hard times.
Yeah.
Right? Going to climb a mountain while you're on treatment. I shot a movie when I was first diagnosed, and my first 6 months of treatment was at North Carolina back at Duke. And my boy, who was a producer for ESPN, and his partner just happened to be shooting or starting the pre-production of a film on Wendell Scott, the first African-American NASCAR driver who won, right? And my boy knew I had been acting. I came out to LA in 2002, started my little acting career and this and that thing. And my mom we got the information from Duke University that they had, and this is controversial because in my friend's mind and in the football medical staff and some of the other doctors' mind, they did me wrong. But because they came into the room one day after 6 months treatment saying, there's nothing else we can do. And because they were giving me, there was certain things that they were allotting for, but a transplant was like $500,000. They weren't going to do that. And so, I had 5 years on the football.
You can't afford to save me.
You see what I'm saying? So, and guess what though? I didn't take it as that because I wanted to come back to LA anyway. I love Cali. I was missing Cali anyway. So I'm like, I didn't have insurance. Because I had SAG insurance before I got sick, and then it ended just when I started feeling like something's not right. I literally called the girl because you can get Cobra up to a month or so afterwards. I called the woman. She answered the phone and said, "Sir," and this is before I knew I was sick. She said, "Sir, if you had just called yesterday, I was one day late. I mean, if I'm lying, I'm frying because this is my recollection. My recollection. She could have said, "Oh, you missed it by a year," but that's not. I'm telling you, that's not what it was because this is stuck in me. Yeah. And she said, I said, "Oh, okay." I just, call friends or whatever, see if I can get an appointment somewhere. I made an appointment to go see one of my friends' moms at a nursing, something. Yeah. I just knew I was always kind of the guy just trying to figure it out. Had a good enough community, a good enough circle, and I'm a good friend that I knew I would be taken care of. Anyway, long story short, we're going back to, I get cleared from Medi-Cal, so we're on our way back to LA to get treatment at UCLA. And my mom didn't tell me this about what was going on, but in her mind, she was like, "Man, do I let my son, I got the movie, she's like, do I let my son shoot this film risking a delay in treatment,
Yeah.
right? I was in bad shape, right? Obviously, they got me down to 50% remission, or do I let him shoot this film because this could be the last film we could shoot? And so I shot the film, got to LA, started my treatment. Like 6 months later, the film comes out, and then Wendell Scott is now in the Hall of Fame for NASCAR.
Good.
And the greatest compliment I've gotten probably to this day on a film that I was a lead in or anything that I've done is, man, I thought that his children, when they saw it, said they thought they were watching his dad.
Really?
Yeah, yeah.
That's the biggest.
I mean, yeah, that's what I'm saying. So it was called A Race Story. Rory Karff was the
Race Story.
A Race Story, yeah. Rory Karff and Kenan Holly, old teammate of mine and good friend. They were producer director on it. And funny story is, Kenan was the producer and my friend, and Rory the director. Directors always want to push the line, right?
Yeah.
So they were like, man, we got to get you in these cars because they're old school cars on dirt tracks.
Yeah.
And Kenan's like, no, there's no way in hell we're going to put him in. So anyway, long story short, we get on a track one night, we're shooting, and Kenan's talking to my mom. And he said, my mom said this, and he did too. He said, all of a sudden, Kenan stops talking. He starts looking at the car, and he goes, is that Charles Porter in the car?
Oh, you're moving.
I'm in the car, bro. He was away from set. He was away from the director. They threw me in the car while they could sneak me in. And bro, I'm telling you, it was slick too. It was slick. So we had some good times, man. And
Your mom was there?
My mom's been by my side ever from the diagnosis. I mean, I called. She was my first call from the emergency room, and then William Hill, my best friend, was the second call. And my mom said she went into shock, took off all her clothes. She was in Florida, ran around the house, and then booked a ticket, and literally never went back.
Wow.
She brought 2 bags, left the whole house. Her husband ended up moving out here as well. Now they live in Marine Del Rey. But she was there every day of the first transplant and UCLA for 6 weeks in the hospital. Every day in a little pull-out chair bed. The second one in North Carolina, where we were in an apartment condo for that one. And then the third one recently at City of Hope, the bone marrows.
So I was going to ask you, when you talked about brainwashed for greatness,
Yeah.
and you said something when you said that, but it reminded me of I think about my dad a lot, and he used to say things when he used to say this all the time when we were a business partner, where I was his manager, and then when he was my coach, he would say it for different reasons, but he would say we were working on a big deal, like kind of like one of those deals where I'm like I can't let this not happen, like I want it so bad. I know that's not a good place to be on deals, and if it doesn't happen, I'm going to be extremely disappointed and ashamed to go back, to come up and say, hey, we fell short, I didn't close the deal, those type of deals. When he could see my angst there, he would always say, and we're talking like, depends on who you are, maybe these aren't big numbers, but it can make the difference of like whether we get a $4 million check next month or not, right? And for me, at 25 years old,
Oh, man.
screwing up a $4 million check for my family, my dad, which is my family, there's a lot of pressure on me.
Absolutely.
And I don't care who you are, that's a significant amount of money,
Yes,
in
indeed.
my opinion. So I'm talking to him, and he would say, hey, well, if they agree to the terms, great. If they don't, even better.
Wow. That's kind of like that Navy SEAL thing.
That's what, you said something that made me
Yes.
think about it. And he would, all the time, even better, we'll do it ourselves, even better, we'll do it, even better. And then same thing, sometimes people would let me down when I was boxing because I needed sparring partners to prepare myself. And we'd fly them in, feed them, like, have food, place to stay, like just make sure they're ready to go and treat them well, because a lot of people don't treat their sparring partners well, and then they just don't show up one day.
Come on.
And he would say, for instance, oh man, if he shows up, great. If not, even better, we get to work on this, we get to work on that. But that was that attitude. And then another thing he would say, and I've heard other people say this, but I'd never heard him say it until recently, but we were reflecting on some things he doesn't even talk about, like, like he grew up, for instance, in a time where, he would work in the kitchen in the back washing dishes, but he wasn't allowed to go out to where the people were being served or eat there, right? He remembers that, in restrooms and so on and so forth, never talked about it. but somehow we never talked about that stuff with negativity. You know, he would say things like, yeah, man, he's like, yeah, I was back there and I knew the chef and he wouldn't even cook the best food for the people that actually were being served at the restaurant. He said the best food was in the back. So the chef had, he said, I knew his favorite pot that he liked, his skillet that he liked to cook in. So I'd make sure that there was multiple skillets, but I'd pick his, get it to the front, wash it, and get it right back to him.
Right.
Because when it was time to eat, all the good eats, he would say the good eats were back here.
Man.
That was his attitude at a young age, and I don't know where he got that from. But then he would, somehow we were reflecting on some of the things that, you know, the injustices, so to speak. And we were just in a deep conversation. And, you know, he goes, man, he said, you know, when something like that, he said, things don't happen to you, they happen for you.
Wow.
And they don't happen to you, they happen for you. And so the reason I bring that up, and because it reminds me, when I think of brainwashed for greatness, without having, and the reason I brought it up is if you could talk through more about what that means, is that I was telling someone the other day that same thing. It doesn't happen to you, it doesn't happen for you. They were talking about something with their parents and what their parents didn't do or aren't doing with them, for them, and so on and so forth. And he was talking about the fire it gives him, and like when I say fire, like negative fire, that's the way he viewed it. And I said, it's happening for you. You have to look at it that way. And I know you can look at it the other way around and say, this is unfair. This is that. It is. But if you take on this mindset and brainwash, there we go, brainwash yourself to, this happened for me.
Yes.
You start making different decisions. Oh, if this happened for me, that means I need to take this approach. I need to do this. If this indeed happened for me, if somebody gives me $1 million, I need to go either like preserve it, put it in the bank, earn some interest, like figure out what do I do if it happened for me. If someone smacks me in the face and someone says, and I take on the mindset, well, no, that happened for you, then I have to make sense of it, right? In the future. So it's a weird, hard thing to tell somebody, and also and I'm still struggling with that. But could you talk to me about what does that mean, brainwash for greatness?
Let's take it to let's just expound on what you just said, because as I'm hearing you say this, things happening for you. I brought 3 books of poetry for you today that I wrote during my journey, right? And the first one was Get to Know, okay? And we just got evacuated a couple of days ago because of the fire, okay? And all I took were my journals, my laptop, like 2 sweaters. The clothes doesn't even matter, but a couple pictures and some business stuff. That's it. As I'm putting the journals back, I started reading through them. I didn't date back to 01, and I was still in college, and I started reading through it, and I'm like, dang, like, this dude is trying to be the best person that he could. I mean, constantly in there is, this is what I'm working on right now. And I'm talking about, this is a guy, me, who loved to party, loved to be out, you know, doing things that be social. And, you know, things that I would look at myself from this point of view and look back and say, wow, that dude can't be about business because he's wilding, you know? And there were some things that I shouldn't have been getting into, shouldn't have been doing, but I did it. Happened to me or for me? For me. Then I got sick at 30 years old, 29, 30 years old. I was going in a way against a force that was bigger than what I expected it to be, which was Hollywood. When I came out here, pretty good looking, 6'3", had curly hair, had a different, it was a good situation to be where I was, to do things and have access to things that most people probably wouldn't have, because I had no money, but I still had access. That is a precarious situation to be in, because one, you're susceptible to get taken advantage of because you don't have money and you have access, which means you're around people that do have money and power. So let's just say it's still taking me 20 years to get to where I was. So unfortunately, I didn't let myself be taken advantage of in those ways that were possible, but I did dabble into things that I probably shouldn't have. That being said, getting cancer in the way that I did was a straight wake-up call. And then spending, like, I never wanted to leave LA for a second because I was nervous about if I might miss an audition, I might miss this, I might miss. When I got cancer, I had to go for 6 months to go get because there was no other choice.
Yeah.
Like I had to get treated. The first treatment that I took was at the public hospital, and I'm literally like shoulder to shoulder with somebody who is not gonna make it.
Godly.
My mom was like, "You won't survive if you stay here." The medicine line was 600 people deep. Nothing against the public facilities, because God knows they were doing whatever they could do, but we had other availability of other options,
yeah.
you know, and thank God. And so when I went to Duke and left Duke, got away, I was like, oh, okay, you can leave LA, and I'm shooting a movie. I'm getting better. I'm shooting a movie. I'm awake. So that got me to detach myself from, you know, being reliant on just staying in the city, waiting for my opportunity.
Yeah.
Oh, I gotta go create. I can go create things. You know, look at the people that were stars back when I was coming up, like Johnny Depp, Brad Pitt. They were all from like the Midwest.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Or then you have, which I didn't know, then you have a lot of people like Denzel and Natalie Portman and other people who, you know, went to Yale and this, that, and the other thing. And USC, I didn't even know about USC was like the thing that if you go there, you're kind of like already plugged in. Yeah. So I was completely ignorant. And ignorance was bliss at the time because I just thought that I could still do what I was going to be able to do.
Yeah.
And anyway, long story short, man, I know I was getting off track here, but it's just like the brainwashing came from, okay, I'm not really relying on that. I'm not really relying on this. Then I went into the 6-week period in the hospital. Nobody can come see me getting, you know, wheelchair under the tunnel of the hospital to get from the room to the radiation, to get full body radiation. Then you get to know yourself real well. And it comes from inside, bro. We're all given a light, right? We're all given this charge. We're all given this ability. Whether you're the best carpenter, plumber, electrician, whatever, boxer.
Yeah.
There's something that you've been gifted with that when you really have to tap in for survival or for, you know, you find out who you really are when you get put in hard situations.
Yeah.
So when you say it happened for you, that's what I start to think about, because the first transplant, I'm in the hospital, I'm thinking, okay, wow, that was close. Like, man, I remember it took me, I would go out for a walk for like 5 minutes, had to go back in the house and lay down. Then it was 10. Then it was, you know, I mean, it took me a year to recover from that. And I was 30 years old, coming off being in some of the best shape of my life. So then a couple of years later when I relapsed, then I got the immunotherapy. Again, like, okay, wait, well, it's not as bad as what it was the first time. Yeah. And then the second time, you know, the CAR T cell transplant was like, oh, well, I'm actually in an apartment, but I'm away from my kids for 6 weeks. I'm in North Carolina again. It's snowing. But it's not as bad as the first. I'm in an apartment. I can go back, you know. So it's always like the silver lining, but the brainwashing thing, like your dad is very, very similar in mindset, was like, yeah, I'm in the back, but I'm about to get the best food. Like, right? Yeah, I'm getting cancer treatment, but I'm walking out there. Like, that's how it got to for me. Like, I literally would be walking out of the door from treatment, and seeing somebody blow into a straw in a wheelchair coming in and say, man, it's not that bad for me, right?
Yeah.
It's like when you can start seeing life like that and always think to yourself, it could always be worse. Yeah. Like literally in a bone marrow transplant facility, again, whenever I'm getting wheelchaired through a hospital, I see some ill shit, bro.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm telling you, I was going through past some rooms where I was just like, dang.
And you know what you're seeing.
You know what you're seeing, exactly.
You know how it all happens.
You know what I'm saying? And I'm like, what kind of cancer is that?
Yeah.
You know, and I'm sitting here going, and I got tubes coming out of every arm, and I'm saying, looking in that room, saying, damn.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's all relative, man. That's why these Navy SEALs, especially the ones that, you know, had active duty and this, that, and the other thing, they probably seen some things.
Yeah.
You know?
Their perspective is.
Yeah, my mindset. I kind of said, I think people who can relate, in my mind, to kind of like my journey and what I've seen, are like, prisoners and prisoners of war, because with cancer or with any type of, disease that you didn't like cause by doing whatever you're doing,
Yeah.
right? That
Just happened to.
you're right. You're almost you could be a prisoner to it, or you've read the stories about the prisoners and Mandela and POWs. I was just in South Africa, went to Robin Bay and just went and saw the cell, saw the prison yard and things that he did and the garden that he made, and just like, man, you could feel the spirits. You could feel the spirit, the mindset, the mental toughness that one has to have to not just get through that, but to thrive while in it. I never liked the term survivor. I would always say I'm thriving, right? We're not just surviving this. We're going to thrive during it.
No matter the environment,
no matter
the circumstance.
Bro, the last time, when I just got diagnosed with what I got diagnosed with before I had to get the transplant, it's called MDS. And basically your bone marrow stops producing cells, right?
Wow.
So you have to get blood infusions to like platelet level was like 5,000. Like now it's like 350,000, right? I had no white blood cell count. So like the fact that I didn't get sick in that 6 months leading up to the transplant, my mom thought I was crazy because as we're going in to turn myself in basically to the hospital to get the transplant, I was weed whacking the yard because I knew I wouldn't be home for a couple. And she was like, she told me this all afterwards. She says, I was holding my breath the whole time because if you got hit with something and you bled, no platelets, right? But before that time, I was going from the infusion room, would literally show up on it. We were making a movie, I was producing a film, to the set. No one knew. I ain't saying, but I forget sometimes I have my hospital band on. From the infusion room to the set. People were just like,
going back to work.
If I could do it, why not do it, right? If I could do it, why not do it? That's the whole brainwashing.
If I can do it, why not do it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So and what I read, the information that I take in, I'm a big on stoicism. I get my daily stoic from Ryan Holiday every morning. The email. I read the obstacle is the way, ego is the enemy. Marcus Aurelius's meditations. Just constantly trying to, again, a brainwash. You can't just say, I'm going to brainwash myself. What are you doing?
You have to do it.
Yeah. What, like you said, look at all the things your dad said that he was doing. Just in that little conversation you had, just right. That's it. That's what I want. That's what I would want to talk to your dad about. You know what I'm saying? You went from washing dishes, not being able to eat in the restaurant, to being the heavyweight champion of the world. How many times?
2. Yeah. It's actually interesting you bring that up. It reminds me of another story, and I want to make sure I ask you about your books real quick. But he said to me, he just sold like 65 cars, right? And he's just been sitting on them for years. And he's a collector, right?
I had no idea.
And just never really drives them that much, but just like loves his cars and everything from like a 1962 or 4 Volkswagen Beetle with 200 miles to like
what?
To the original F40, to the Ferraris and Ford the Ford GT, which is like they only made for a couple years. All sports cars to like a Woody, the Chrysler. I think it was a Chrysler, but these like old cars from the 50s all around. Sold them. And he sold them because he looked up and he's getting into the 70s and he's not driving them that often, and it's more about the whole in terms of, instead of it just being a pleasurable thing, it turned into a chore for everybody. Somebody's got to go start them up and drive them around, and lifestyle changes. He starts to value different things, but the point is, cars are so important to him growing up. Not for flash. He typically drove back and forth to church or the gym in a Dodge passenger van with throws all in the back. And then I remember eventually we upgraded to a Suburban, and I was so happy. I'm like, that he might have a Rolls Royce in the garage, but he didn't like to drive in front of people. It wasn't about that. What it was about, he was at the Job Corps when he was like 17 or 18, and he came from like his mom was a sharecropper, and his dad, he came from like proper poverty, right?
Mm-hmm. What state again?
Houston, Texas.
Oh wow! Right.
And he lived in a place they called the Bloody Fifth Ward, and Fifth Ward was a poor area of town, right? And so on and so forth. But the poor people called him poor. They were like, "Oh, that's the poor kid amongst the poor kids, right?" That's how poor he was. So he goes to the Job Corps.
That's poor.
Yeah, that's poor. He said we were so poor, I couldn't afford the O and the R. We was just poor. That's what he was saying. There wasn't no O and R. And so he gets to the Job Corps and finally gets his first pair of shoes with no holes in them and all that. And so on Fridays, after a certain time there, you're allowed to go into the city and eat. You get a burger or something, and you have like a little bit of an allowance that you earn from working. And so Friday comes, and he's the biggest kid. He's like 6'4", 215 pounds, which is huge back then in general for people. And so they all called him Big George. And so Friday comes around, and he's waiting because other people, he doesn't have a car, other people do, and he's ready to jump in the back and go in. And he realized like Friday after Friday, he started showing up and everybody's gone. And he's like, how do I keep missing everybody? Apparently they knew he was going to be waiting. And so they would leave a little bit early so we don't have to let George hop in.
Oh, man.
And once he realized it, he was so down, and he said, man, when I'm champ, I'm going to have 100 cars.
He's lying.
That's it. And then sure enough, the minute he got his money, it was, he had the guy who made the Batmobile. He said, I want him to make my Lincoln, right? So the guy there was two Excaliburs, and I think he wanted one, and the other guy that had one was Humphrey Bogart. He was so proud of that.
Stop.
He was like, I'm the car guy. And that went on but that's all this happened for me,
Right.
That attitude,
Right.
if this, all right, now how do I turn this?
That's right.
And so I'm always looking for those mantras and so on and so forth. And I actually have a question for you, for me, right? What would you say to a person? For me, I struggle with being social, and I do feel like I'll avoid social. Like if someone's like, hey, there's an event going on, it's a mixer, and there's some people that you either make friends or maybe it's good business connections or whatever. Let's say there's a cocktail hour and then there's a dinner after.
Yeah.
I'll slide right into the dinner. I'm that guy, and I do not want to get there first.
Right.
And then, if I don't want to offend people, I'll get there like 20 minutes right during the cocktail hour.
Yeah.
Show my face and then go in the restroom, get on my phone, and then I'm shy like that. I don't know why, and I'm trying to get past it. I know it's holding me back, right?
Yeah.
And but the point is, I know there's positives to it, but I think it holds me back from being as good as I could be, right? But what? Just curious, when we speak of brainwash for greatness, what would you say to a person like me that feels like that's holding me back?
It's funny you said, because my wife has a funny picture of us going to this engagement, City of Hope engagement, and there's like 15, 20 tables that are beautifully set, and no one's there except for me at the table. The party's going on, but I'm waiting for the food. So you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, but if it was you sitting in that picture, you would say, you see how shy I am, or whatever, or like not social I am.
Yeah.
I'm a very social person with people that I like.
Yeah.
So,
That's true.
so what I'm saying is, not that I didn't like anybody there,
I know what you mean.
but right.
You know them. Yeah.
Right. But I knew what type of party it was. It was people that were going to be talking about. See, I'm not always comfortable talking about what I was experiencing when I was close to the process. Like it took me months before I could actually say what I had that made me get the bone marrow transplant. And I'm bringing back to what you were saying, but just to give you a quick little story about brainwashing. When I checked into City of Hope, and I knew I was, and I met the nurses, I told them specifically, like, never tell me bad news, just tell my mom. Okay? That every nurse that was in my room or on that floor that knew me knew not to bring. So about a week after I got the transplant, right? I'm in the hospital, right? And you're in there, you gotta stay. I started having like 104-degree temperatures. Like I was sweating through the sheets. I was shaking out of my boots. It was just Tylenol every 6 hours on the clock. I could have possibly blacked out. I don't even know. It felt like it was an eternity. But when I came out of that, I said one day randomly, I was like, as a nurse in the office, I said, oh, by the way, what kind of infection did I have? And my mom was like, oh, you had sepsis, darling, and E. coli at the same time.
Oh my
yeah.
God.
So right, but what would be the point of me having that information?
Yeah, you're in there. You're in the hospital.
Exactly.
You know, you're gonna get up and diagnose. You know, you're
right.
not gonna do. Yeah.
But me, I just thought it was part of the process. You see? So when you're right, so
you're like, this is part of the process.
I thought,
but
yeah.
had they told you, you would have been like,
I might have gotten nervous.
Yeah,
Who knows what I? But the point is that it didn't impede my thought, because every day I'm in, like when you talk about mantras, even when I'm sweating and soaking wet and 140, I'm saying to myself, I am cured, I'm healthy, I'm happy, I'm cured, I'm healthy. You know, and we had a white blood cell a meditation that we listen to every day, because that's how you get released. If your white blood cells start going up, then the match is taken. And so, so going back to your question of what would I say to somebody who might not be as social, is like kind of like what I say to people and to myself if there's an audition or if there's a meeting. It's like when you start to feel something, it's not nervousness, it's excitement. Like I'm sitting here talking to you for like 2 hours, and I'm probably like the third or fourth person that you're going to be talking to today. Like, don't you enjoy having these conversations?
I do.
Right. So what if every time you went out to a social event, there was an opportunity to have this conversation? Remember I told you there was a random woman at the softball thing that just happened to be standing next to me, and all she had to say was mention her background of like sleeping on the floor. That's the end route. Like someone, if you go to certain events, right? We're not talking parties. We're talking about social events where there's probably like a charity attached to it or something. Exactly. Right. Then there should be at least one encounter that has you learning about yourself, about life, or about somebody else who has a great story to tell. Like great stories, you know. I just told somebody this the other day, maybe yesterday or maybe today, like the Straight Outta Compton movie is probably one of the most inspirational films that came out that year, if not in the last 5 years. Why? Because you're talking about 4 young brothers who literally had the world against them, right? From poor backgrounds, drug infested, gang infested, no fathers for the most. I mean, come on.
Yeah, and
but like 2 are basically billionaires. One is.
That's right.
Cube ain't too far off from being, he's 100 millionaire.
And the other one, like you said, within 10 years he'll be there.
You know what I'm saying? So I'm just like, when I went to Africa, and we were living in the lap of luxury because we're shooting a movie out there in Cape Town. So we're in the nicest condos, right on the water, shooting a film on yachts, this, that, and the other thing. And I get a day or two to myself, and I ask somebody to drive me around the coast, right? A 5-hour trip around the coast. And I'm like, show me the townships. Have you ever been to Brazil?
I actually have, yeah.
Right, you know about the favelas, like where you don't go?
Yeah, I almost went in.
Yeah.
I didn't,
And they're like, you want to see the townships? I'm like, yeah, take me to, like, I seen the opulence. Yeah. Show me how it's, show me where the people at. And he goes, all right. And, he starts to, thousands, I'm talking about 10, not even like color, just 10 shanties. Kids pumping water to get water outside of them, all portable bathrooms, but everyone's clean. Everyone has clean clothes. I said, man, for this to be like this, I said, everyone's wearing nice clothes. He says, yeah, we really take pride. He said, we. And I said, oh, okay. I said, so do you live around here? He was like, this is my township. And I was like, take me to your crib. Yeah. And he's like, man, he said, I've never taken anyone to my house before. His sister was there and her husband. Yeah. And when they opened the door and they saw me, man, it was like they had seen like, Eddie Murphy from Coming to America. And they were just so warm and welcoming, and it was
like
just
when they walk in the house in Queens and they're wearing all their
exactly.
Fur coats,
exactly. Man, and it was just like I said, seriously came from that. Not just seeing how beautiful the situation was for people to not have anything in my mind, in my reality compared to what I'm living, but to still be so happy, so loving, so caring, so considerate. I said, if our kids in America from tough places saw this, no PlayStations, no Jordans, no schools with books accessible, get on a bus to go to a library. Yeah. Just the accessibility of America. I know it's hard without money. I know that we have so many difficulties that are, that our youth, whether black, white, Latino, whatever, Asian, people are from tough circumstances.
Yeah.
But the brainwashing, latch on to a story. It's my duty to tell my story, to get those letters, the MDS, out of my mouth, because somebody else is going through that. I was reading Radical Remission to latch on to stories of how people survived situations that they were told, go home and get your stuff in order. But yet 15, 20 years later, they're still telling their story because they changed their mindset. They changed their habit. They changed their low environment. You know, what can you do to flip your concern of what may be an uncomfortable situation? Get comfortable being uncomfortable. That's another thing I write all the time. Find the situations that you're going to be uncomfortable and go to those.
Can I ask you, and please, it's actually kind of a continuation of what you're saying. So you kind of spoken of why the drive. You got a family to look after. You got a thriving business, you know, that has to be tended to, and these projects where you have to travel and go deep for so many weeks and so on and so forth. And you got to, you know, you're helping a lot of people. You're creating, you know, you're part of, you know, creating business opportunities for people, employment, so like I said, your family, and so on and so forth. And you're a walking inspiration. Why the drive? Because I know you do personal coaching for people.
Absolutely.
You publish books. I've got 3 of them right here. And what's the drive? Why?
I mean, the drive is...
When you got enough to worry about yourself.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right. Enough to be consumed with yourself.
Right. No, because I love people that love me, man. I mean, you know, having a community is so important. Like, I cannot just pass away when my mom's still alive.
Yeah.
She wouldn't be able to take that. I cannot pass away while my wife has 2 young girls. You know, so if it's not for that, you know, I had personal goals. Like I said, when I went back to those journals and I saw what I had written, I'm gonna have this time. I want to be. You surround yourself with greatness. I told someone the other day, like, because I get asked this question a lot, like, how do you? I canceled blood. I canceled friendships. If you were negative or you weren't growing and you weren't trying to be exceptional,
Yeah.
we're not spending time
Nothing
together.
for us to talk about.
There's nothing for us to talk about. Like, you literally can surround yourself with trouble, and you know where that's going to lead you. You can surround yourself with positivity, and you could be the most positive broke person that there is.
Yeah.
At least you're positive. Or you can surround yourself with people who are positive, hardcore, driven, respectful. You know, honesty, kindness, and respect was the motto of my junior prep school. Like I said, my dad never lied. My mom was always a proponent of me living out my dreams. Education was the #1 thing. I used to come home from prep school my junior year, and it would be like a Thanksgiving break, and there'd be like 50 letters, football recruiting letters, on my bed. And I'm like, dude, Dad, my parents were divorced when I was 12. I was like, you didn't tell me about, he's like, I don't care about football. He's like, you're getting education.
Wow.
And I'm like, this is gonna pay for the education. Because he didn't know how that worked.
Yeah.
I didn't even know how it worked.
But you knew enough.
I mean, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But I knew that you can get a scholarship. And so, you know,
Wow.
yeah. So, you know, it's literally, I know for a fact that if you put your mind to something, like if you start waking up tomorrow every day, and writing in your journal, just these words, I will be available in uncomfortable situations.
I will be available.
I will be available in uncomfortable situations.
Wow.
If you
Available to others?
Yeah. If you just write that, right? And you start, all of a sudden, you start writing it every day, just 3 times a day. Like, write it 3 times in each day. Just 3 times each day. It should take you 5 minutes, if that. Or whatever mantra you want to come up with to say to yourself. Because it's not about missing opportunities, bro, to like grow your business in these social events. It's about missing a chance to hear a story that's gonna make you better. You know what I'm saying? Like, I got better from talking to you today because I look at your father from an outside perspective. Now I'm getting more, as you and I get to know each other, I'm starting to learn more about who he is just through you. And I had no idea there was so much to your father, to becoming a champion, which is silly because you don't become a champion in that sport, hell, any sport, without having some type of insane fortitude, belief in yourself, character, and drive. And that's what was so curious about why Sugar Ray Leonard was a champion, because it seemed like he came from a good background.
That's right.
Which doesn't mean to say that you have to be from the mud to actually like be something.
Yeah.
But if you look at the history of boxing and my limited, I'm ignorant I'm just learning so much just being a part of craft and coming in here. I was watching some fights the other day. I was like, man, this is amazing. I've never seen these fights before. But it just seemed like most boxers came from hardship.
They all did.
You know what I'm saying?
For some sort of hardship.
Right. But nowadays, you look at the premier athletes, and some of these kids, are coming from multi-million-dollar families because they have access to the coaches. And if you don't, then somebody might sponsor you and put you in those situations. There's schools that are now being built specifically for great athletes to be able to afford to be in close quarters to the best equipment, the best coaches. I mean, when I go to Duke now and I see these guys, they're all plugged into these electronic devices that are monitoring every single twitch. Back in the day, it was like lifting sandbags. So as things develop, which was part of my experience and my journey with cancer, is like, fortunately, science stayed ahead of my diagnosis. There was always something that was coming up down the pipeline for my specific disease. So man, I feel like I'm put on this earth to do something. I always have. I mean, ever since I was 9, that's when I could first start remembering, knowing that I was supposed to do something special in this world.
Put on this earth.
Yeah.
So that leads me to my last question. Then I was actually already thinking what I wanted to ask you, and you beat me to it. So I think about, let's go back to, it's not happening for you, it's happening to you. And if it's not happening to you, it happened for you, right? And these different mantras, and you said one earlier that was very similar. Do you, like boxers, you talked about boxers a lot, how they have to come from the mud or not? And what we find, there was a guy, a famous dude, I'm sure you know of him, named Michael King. I think he's passed recently, but I believe he had King Vision, which opened his eyes, like a bunch of other big TV shows. And he lived in Malibu, up, I think at the top of like Sarah Retreat. I just remember looking at his house, and someone used to joke and say, "That's the guy who writes Oprah's check." I'm sure nobody's cutting Oprah's checks anymore, but anyway, I get the point. He said, "I'm going to set out to create the next great American heavyweight," and so he went out and he consulted my father, my brother, and a lot of other people in the industry. He's like, "I'm going to consult the best minds." Put up, I think it was like $10 million or something like that in the bank account, and draw against it to develop 10 to 15 guys. Like, go out and find the best athletes, put them in a camp, get the best trainers and supplementation, and so on and so on. Long story short. Oh, and I remember my father saying, like, "That's not how you get a champion." And he kept saying that. And at a young age, I was thinking, I was probably like 25. I'm like, but what does he mean by that? You know?
Right.
And so I'm like, yeah, like that sounds right. Go get the guys that normally would have gone to play professional football and da. And the result was they got no champions. They didn't even get any like real contenders. These are great athletes, great men. I know quite a few of them.
Right.
And so, but my point was like, my dad was like, to find that guy, you got to go find a guy who is basically going through great adversity, right? And da. And he's like, you build those guys up, but that's not the way to do it. And he kept trying to advise him, I think to the point where he didn't want to hear it anymore.
Right.
And you got to try stuff like that, obviously, so I respect that. But if I think through the greatest fighters in history, right? They all had a story.
Right.
Mike Tyson, Ali, someone stole his bike, came from a family, mother and father in the same household, not extreme poverty. My dad was extreme poverty. Floyd Patterson, you go, there's some pain and there's some trauma back there, right?
Right.
And so if you look at them in retrospect, and I like how Steve Jobs said, he always says you can only connect the dots in retrospect, in looking back. It sounds like that stuff happened for them.
Right.
Because that's what made them who they are in the ring, especially though boxing is 90% mental.
Right.
It sounds like that. So taking on this belief, to believe that it happens for you, do you have to believe that there's a higher purpose already set out for you? That do you have to believe in that your life already, this path is already set for you. You just have to live it out, and that the future is like, obviously you can change the future. Don't get me wrong, but you're kind of already like, what's the term?
The fate or like
Yeah,
destiny.
like,
Destiny.
do you have to believe in some version of destiny to believe that this happened for you to prepare you for what you're ultimately supposed to do?
I said this,
Or not,
and I would love to ask your father this, and maybe you know this. And by the way, I just want to make sure I answered your question about what I think I would do. Again, in your situation, about choose your events wisely. You know, if it's something you're actually interested in, just go.
Okay.
Just go, and then you'll run into somebody who you'll actually have a great conversation with, maybe learn a thing or two, or you'll have an experience that will, you know, empower you, or you know, just fill your life. So that's mine. But don't force yourself out. That's no. I gave a commencement speech years ago, and I said, you know, my 7th grade English teacher, I have the report card, and I brought that to the speech, and I said, and I read it, and it said like, Charles has a knack for poetry. He should share more of his poems, and then I had the first 2 books written of poetry.
Oh, really?
And I said, sometimes people see something in you that you don't even know that you have, right? And the universe will feed into that. Like, did anyone tell your dad that he was going to be great one day?
It's interesting. There was one, so J.D. Foreman, who we got his name from, who was not his biological dad, was a guy named Leroy, and that's a whole long story. But J.D. is a guy who, his mother left Marshall out of embarrassment because my dad was so light complected as a baby, and he didn't start to like get brown. And everybody's dark, like this microphone in my family. And I'm the darkest of my siblings. They all look like you,
Oh,
which
wow,
is
yeah.
funny. But long story short, she was so embarrassed once they realized, oh, you know, Nancy had an affair. She left and snuck out at night. And then JD did the same thing once he figured out the love of his life left.
Wow.
Even though he knew what happened.
Right.
He followed her to Houston and raised my dad as his dad. My dad didn't know he had a different dad until he was 27.
Wow.
But he said JD, and JD struggled with alcoholism and a number of things, but always kept the job, brought his check on. And he loved him to his dying day. And that's why I know as my grandfather. About 5'7", you know? And JD would pick up my dad and say, heavyweight champion of the world. Stronger than Jack Johnson, faster than like since he was a kid.
Hello. I mean, you know, I think that
So that was the only person.
But did he love him?
Yes.
Okay. Did your dad love JD?
My guy.
So if you got people like my mom or my dad or man, you know how many times I wanted to stop going on audition after audition and my best friend would be like, man, you're great. You could do, you know how many times I've told him, he had a deal on the table for 3.5 years that was driving him crazy. Only conversation I had with him, not knowing a damn thing about that business, was you never lose. And I said that for 3.5 years. And guess what?
You never know.
He sealed the deal this past month.
Really?
He sealed the deal this past month. 3.5 years of someone that close to you never saying, man, don't worry about it, you'll get the next one. Nah, if he still wanted it, then I was gonna speak positivity into his being, into his mind, and his soul. That I've never seen that dude lose. I don't hang around with losers, dude. It's not allowed.
Wow.
I'm telling you. I tell my family, I tell anybody who I care about, don't show fear, don't show weakness. You will get cut. Period.
Yeah.
Bro, it's a mentality. It's trauma. I've seen manifestations of things that I've written down. I just told you I went back to journals from 20-something years ago, and in them, the first line in the one from 2001 was, 2001 was, I'm writing in my journal because I want to be a better man than I am today. I don't know where I got that stuff from.
When you look back, you're like, I don't even know where. Yeah.
I mean, I punched windows out of my principal's office at junior prep school, and they gave me a second chance. I mean, I was not. My parents got divorced. It drove me crazy. I was 12. I'm my dad's only child. My mom I have an older half brother, older half sister, 10 years, 13 years older than me. You know, it was my world.
Yeah.
And, you know, and there was nothing I couldn't do. And
And you always wrote it down.
I mean, I think that's one of the greatest things you could do for yourself is to journal.
So could we I'd love to end on this, and I have everything in the box is my questions for next time, by the way.
I love it.
I have so many questions.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. If you could talk about the power of writing stuff down, I'll tell you why. Two things. You just made me realize I never connected this dot. I'm sure my dad didn't, so I'm going to call him.
Mm-hmm.
So J.D. Foreman kept calling him Jack Johnson. Stronger than Jack Johnson,
Yeah.
right? That's who he knew. J.D. is probably born in 1909 or something like that, right?
Right.
This is 1956. He's probably saying that, right? No Ali at that point. There's none of those guys. There's a little bit of Sugar Ray Robinson and Joe Louis. And
Wow.
so that's Jack Johnson. Probably 40 years after that, Archie Moore, who was my dad's trainer leading up to the Ali fight and when he got his first title.
He was, how old was he?
So taking a quick step back, Archie Moore was brought in maybe 8 fights before my dad's title shot the first time to sharpen him up.
Right.
And my dad respected him a lot, and they knew that. Then my dad brought him back later in his career when he did his comeback, because once again, it's Archie Moore. Like he's
Right.
one of the greatest ever. But I found this interview on YouTube of Archie talking about things that I had never heard, and I showed it to my dad. But one of the things he said, and I didn't show him this piece, they were like, talk about who do you think some of the greatest fighters of all time are? And he was like, he named a couple people, and he said, oh, and George Foreman. And they're like, really? Yeah, they said he has this way of going about things as though he knows something that other people don't know about the craft. And he said, yeah, the only person I could say that he reminds me of Jack Johnson.
Christmas. I'm trying to tell you, dog. Yes, yes.
I connected that dot.
Man, I'm telling you, the power of the spoken word is, man. Listen, I'll leave it at this. And one of the books that my therapist gave me before going into this transplant, it's called The True Meaning of Water, or The True Power of Water, where Japanese scientists studied frozen crystals from water that had negative connotations or negative writing on the outside, spoken to negatively, and ones that are positive, and positive writing. Positive ones were perfectly formed crystals, crystal white. The other ones were discolored, disfigured. Okay, the people have done it for plants, and let's just be real. Speak to a kid negatively and see what happens. Speak positivity into a kid and see how it grows. I mean, if these 3 things that I've just mentioned, and that we just talked about with the Jack Johnson from JD, that story, and these 2 scientific studies, and then me personally sitting here after 3 transplants telling you that I've been writing stuff down in my, the power of the spoken word, writing the journals, also writing things down, if you do have kids, gives them something to tap back into to get to know who you are even more so in some of the time. I see my girls were at one point too young to understand what daddy was going through when I was coming home. But they saw the tubes hanging out of my arm. They knew I was gone for months at a time or weeks at a time, getting something, getting a tune-up is what we called it. But now they're old enough they see me give a commencement speech at their school already. They hear people talking about, they're old enough and they're wise to the game now. They know that, okay, daddy suffered through something. They had a front row seat on challenges, or like we like to say, opportunities. Now change the word challenge to an opportunity.
Yeah, that's also
My therapist did,
Brainwashed.
Exactly. Man, brainwash yourself. It's the best thing you can do for yourself.
Yeah.
It's the best. If you really want to be great, if you really want to do something that's exceptional that no one else has ever done, brainwash yourself. Read the stories of those who have done. You have a front row seat. Man, how beautiful is it that your father has capabilities enough to recall some of these stories and talk to you about these situations where you can go and ask him those questions. There's many great athletes that we've seen come and go that have kids that can't talk to them anymore. They gotta watch the YouTube clips. They gotta watch Kobe.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the greatest of all time. The mindset is just, exactly how I try to emulate. You know, there was no other way.
There was no bad.
He didn't even want. He said one story. He said he was late to school one day or something like that, and then he said he'd never be late again to dropping his daughters off.
That was that.
That was that. I mean, it's like, how great is it to say that you're going to do something or be somewhere and do it? And do it. I set a challenge to my boys last week. Okay, everybody wake up at 4:30 in the morning. I don't know why, just do it. I was waking up at 4:45 anyway, but 4:30, that's just different.
Yeah.
And when that alarm went off, you know what I'm saying? It's different. I was like, I needed my 15 extra minutes. But I said, no, if I'm going to challenge other people to do it, I best be. And guess what? I hit them every single, they were on the East Coast, but I hit them. Okay, 5 days done. Now I told them, right when after Friday, I said, I'm going back to 4:30 or 4:45 next week.
But we did it.
So, you know, it's just like, man, the more I read about people that I admire, the more I realize they put themselves in uncomfortable situations all the time just because it's a test.
Yeah.
It's a test. So, I mean, we're only here one go around, at least in this flesh. You know, like, why not make the best of it?
Yeah. Amen to that, man.
You know.